Breaking news from around your world on this Tuesday, May 15th, 2018. I'm Larry Rice. A Chinese airliner with 119 passengers on board was forced to make an emergency landing after its windshield blew out, sucking the co-pilot halfway out the plane. The jet's captain said the Airbus A319 had been cruising at 32,000 feet when the windshield cracked and made a loud bang, and his co-pilot had been sucked halfway out. However, the co-pilot was wearing a seatbelt and was dragged back into the chaos of the cockpit, where pressure and temperature had dropped and the equipment was failing. The Sichuan Airlines flight was on its way from Chongqing in southwest China to Lhasa in Tibet. Passengers were being served their breakfast when the mishap struck, and the plane plunged suddenly to 24,000 feet. China's Civil Aviation Administration said the co-pilot had a sprained wrist and facial cuts after his ordeal. Another cabin crew member suffered a slight injury as the plane descended. After the plane made an emergency landing in Chengdu, some 27 people on board received medical checkups. Thousands joined funeral processions Tuesday for some of the 61 Palestinians killed by Israeli troops in a mass march on the Gaza border, as Israelis faced growing diplomatic fallout from the use of lethal force against unarmed protesters. Monday marked the deadliest day in Gaza since a 2014 war there and was part of a high-stakes campaign by Gaza's Hamas rulers to break a decade-long border blockade. In addition to those killed, more than 2,700 were injured, mainly by gunfire. The violence came in a surge of protest against Monday's opening of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem, a city claimed by both Israelis and Palestinians as their capital. President Donald Trump decided last year to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. More protests are expected Tuesday. Iraqi election officials confirmed late Monday that the coalition led by Shiite cleric Moqtada al-Sadr, who once led a militia that fought U.S. occupation forces, has won the most seats in a weekend parliamentary election. Sadr was not a candidate himself, but his role could give him a big say in choosing the country's next prime minister. The shift is likely to force the United States, which backed allies of incumbent Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi, to figure out new strategies to defend U.S. interests in Iraq. A spokesman for Sadr said he supported honoring commitments concerning weapons purchases from the U.S. and the training of Iraqi security forces by Americans, as long as there is no interference on the sovereignty of Iraq. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif met with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Moscow as part of an international tour aimed at saving the Iran nuclear deal despite the withdrawal of the U.S. Zarif met with Chinese officials in Beijing over the weekend, and he will meet with foreign ministers from Germany, France, and the U.K. in Brussels on Tuesday. Zarif has said Iran would resume industrial-scale uranium enrichment without any restrictions if the deal can't be saved and sanctions resume. European leaders are trying to keep Iran from dropping the agreement, which curbed Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. President Trump pulled the U.S. out of the Obama-era deal, calling it defective at its core. First Lady Melania Trump underwent surgery for a benign kidney condition on Monday. The White House said Mrs. Trump, who is 48 years old, is expected to remain at Walter Reed Military Medical Center for the rest of the week. A spokesperson for the First Lady's office said the embolization procedure was a success and there have been no complications. CNN reports the surgery was one of the most serious medical procedures performed on a First Lady since Nancy Reagan's mastectomy in 1987. The White House said the First Lady looks forward to a full recovery so she can continue her work on behalf of children everywhere. Former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid underwent surgery after doctors detected pancreatic cancer in a routine screening. The Nevada Democrat's family said his surgeons are confident that the surgery was a success and that the prognosis for his recovery is good. The family went on to say Reed will undergo chemotherapy as the next step in his treatment. They say he's in good spirits and resting with his family. The 78-year-old suffered a freak accident while exercising in 2015 and lost vision in one eye. Reed retired from the Senate shortly after the accident and now serves as co-chair of the MGM Resorts International Public Policy Institute. Police raided 20 apartments in Berlin and Brandenburg on Tuesday and arrested 3 men suspected of being members of a gang smuggling Vietnamese people into Germany. 2 Vietnamese men, ages 57 and 35, and a 26-year-old German were suspected of arranging fake marriages and counterfeit paternity certificates to help people get residency permits in Germany. Officers seized wedding rings, identity documents, phones, and more than 26,000 euros in cash. Investigators said they've been looking into the suspected gang for more than a year and have so far identified 10 German and Vietnamese suspects. Seattle's city council passed a scaled-back version of the so-called Amazon tax, which will impose a $275 per employee head tax on companies in the city with more than $20 million in gross revenue. Seattle's mayor, Jenny Durkin, had threatened to veto the original $540 per employee tax, saying it would cost too many jobs, but said she would sign the latest version. The city plans to use the tax on big businesses to build affordable housing and alleviate homelessness. The tax is expected to raise $44.7 million per year. Amazon, which has 45,000 employees in Seattle, said it was disappointed by today's city council decision to introduce a tax on jobs, but added that the company would resume construction of a 17-story office tower it had placed on hold. A New York judge on Monday sentenced former nanny Yoselin Ortega to life in prison for fatally stabbing 2 children she was hired to care for. The 55-year-old, speaking in Spanish, said, "I'm very sorry for everything that happened." The judge called Ortega's actions pure evil, borrowing a term used by a witness. Ortega used a butcher knife from the kitchen to stab the children and was stabbing herself in the neck when the children's mother walked in. The children's parents, Marina and Kevin Krim, have 1 surviving daughter and have had 2 more children since the 2012 murders. Margot Kidder, who starred as Lois Lane in 1978's Superman with Christopher Reeve, has died at the age of 69 at her home in Montana. She also starred in The Amityville Horror, The Great Waldo Pepper alongside Robert Redford, and Some Kind of Hero with Richard Pryor. Kidder struggled with bipolar disorder throughout her career, but her fellow actors said it was her kindness that defined her. She and Christopher Reeve were polar opposites, according to Mark McClure, who played Jimmy Olsen in the Superman films. He said Reeve was a Juilliard-trained actor. She was a cowgirl. She came from a farm, but she spoke her mind. She was so tough. She stood up for people. She protected me on the set. I was just a kid at the time. Authorities have not revealed the cause of Kidder's death. And that's your update for this Tuesday, May 15th, 2018. I'm Larry Rice. Thanks so much for listening, and have a wonderful day.